I've been an attorney now for 20 years. I've handled cases in the state, in the federal courts. I've even represented aliens before the court, and I mean actual, foreign nationals as opposed to space people. And I've also represented agencies of, I represent Providence Water Supply Board in the city of Providence at times. I represent them, against enforcement actions from Department of Health, DEM, Environmental Protection Agency at the federal level. I've got a case coming up with HUD next at the end of the month, and I was arguing for a guy in front of the FAA just last month. So I've had a lot of exposure to the law, and at the federal level and the state level. And it's terrible what has happened to the Commerce Clause. We have a federal government of express limited powers, and yet the Commerce Clause, which allows Congress to regulate commerce amongst the states, has been exploded, has been made so large that you can't even see the Constitution behind it. So now everything comes through. And now Nancy Pelosi is saying, are you serious? Are you serious? When somebody asks you, is it constitutional to put people in jail, for not buying health insurance? She just thinks it should be blown off. It's a serious issue. The federal government is way beyond its powers. Now, I learned this as a young attorney. You can't go in and shout about the Fourth Amendment in court if you left your door open. You have to exercise a right by closing the door to expect a right to privacy, right? So if you leave the door open, you can't complain of unreasonable search and seizure. The states have to assert their legislative muscle. Under the 10th Amendment, most rights belong to the state. The state has tremendous legislative power. And in the 1950s, when we wanted to unify our national marketplace, they didn't do it with federal law. It was considered, but they did not do it. They did it with uniform state laws. And what they did was create a nationwide marketplace using state law. Now, this is what I want to do. I want to simply flex the muscles of the state's legislative power. I'm not going to come out and say I know what to do about the Fed and that we should abolish it and just give it back to Congress directly, because I can't imagine anything worse than giving Congress direct control over money. Of course, they would probably give it to the Treasury, and I'm not sure that's much better. It almost seems like they did what they did at Runnymede with Magna Carta, and the barons have control of the money. But my major concern is not the Federal Reserve and how they've behaved. Frankly, we have not collapsed. My major concern, yeah, and that's a good point, but my major concern is what the government, what the Obama administration is doing with spending on top of that. I mean, the Fed's job was to support the federal system, the financial system, make sure it did not collapse. What we do not have to do is to pile on a crushing federal deficit. And this is what's coming with the federal deficit, and beware of this. What's coming next is a VAT, a value-added tax. Beware of it. It's coming. The elite is already talking about it. Is watching C-SPAN. Is watching one of these fancy institutes talking, and every expert there was talking VAT. That's a value-added tax. It's essentially a federal sales tax. It will compete with the state of Rhode Island for the revenues it needs. It basically enslaves us because how much tax are we going to pay? There's going to be a tax on absolutely everything. Beware of a VAT. A lot of the countries in Europe have a VAT. Why? Because they're essentially socialist. They have to have a VAT. They have to have one, and that's what they want. So even more than the Fed, I am more afraid of our current administration. And we can do something about that in the next election. The thing about elections is Jim Langevin, I don't know if you know this, but Jim Langevin, not only did he vote against it, but he testified against requiring a photo ID to vote in a federal election. He testified against it. Now, he testified based on his experience that, in my experience, the type of fraud that this act is aimed at is virtually non-existent. I don't know where he got the Cambridge accent, but he went to Cambridge. He was at Harvard for 4 years, so he lost his Warwick accent. But the fact of the matter is that a photo ID is the most ordinary implement of commerce. Everyone has one. If you want public assistance, you need a photo ID. How can you defend a decision to not require a photo ID to vote? You're disenfranchising people in a state where you can just get some guy in the utility companies to tell you who's been shut off for a couple of months. you have a name and you have an address. And you can drive people around in a van and just load them, say, go in there with a name and an address and vote over and over and over again. How could Secretary of State, former Secretary of State Jim Langevin possibly testify under oath before your Congress that in his experience, that type of fraud that a Photo ID Act was designed to require was virtually non-existent? Who was he representing? He wasn't representing you. He's pro-fraud. Now, healthcare. Another thing that Jim Langevin doesn't talk about. You haven't heard him once. Not once has Jim Langevin said, you know, I have constituents who are coming out of URI. Maybe they just want to go core hog. You know, maybe they just want to start a business in their garage. You know, maybe they're young, they're strong, they're healthy. They don't want to go buy health insurance right now. It's not a major priority for them. He thinks they should go to jail. He thinks that's fine. Why? Because everybody who's young has to go in and finance Medicare for everybody else. That's the fact of the matter. Medicare is 16% of the federal budget. And you know what? I'm not against Medicare. People need it. We have to preserve it. But the bottom line is they want to extend. And they want everybody to come in and pay for it. I'm absolutely against the health care. It's unconstitutional. Just briefly, I agree with the court action, absolutely. I applaud it. States should fight. And also, it's unconstitutional because they're going to try and price control the small companies out of business, which will lead to Goliath, which is fascism. Thank you. One of the things, now, if I remember, your question was articulate a vision for more open government, so to speak? Rout out the corruption. Well, you know, if you watch C-SPAN, I mean, you're going to see that a lot of the bills that they're arguing about, they're only talking about conceptual language. When they're on the committees talking about things, they're not even talking about the actual language that's in the bill. But so at least give us the conceptual language. If that's all you can give us the conceptual language online on the same day. If it's conceptual enough, articulable enough that you can talk about it on a congressional committee, well, give us the same summary online the same day. Why not? I mean, I think it's obvious that we want that. You know, as far as term limits, since it was raised, I'm just going to tell you this. I don't want to play to the crowd. I'm just going to tell you what I truly feel. Congress, the term limits are very important at the executive level. I'm not as convinced with the House of Representatives because the person only gets a 2-year term. It's a 2-year term. So on term limits, I do beg to differ on that. That's kind of a limited term already. You just vote the guy out. You know, just vote. Vote the guy out. Be active in your political process. What can you do besides vote? You can campaign. You can contribute. You can be active and engaged in the political process. As far as articulating what to do about Washington, D.C. and how to get out all the corruption, I'll be honest with you. Wow, I don't know if I can. I don't know where to begin. I mean, it's so pervasive. I think I don't think I would know where to begin. Just open government and hope that hold people. You know what the number one thing you can do is, and this is what we're missing in Rhode Island. We don't have a balanced 2-party system. You know, the parties supervise each other. If you have balance, that goes a long way to enabling the system to correct itself because each party supervises each other. Thank you.